Hey, you. I've recently stated that folks are buying up giant ships that they'll never be able to crew up, like the Polaris. A lot of folks clinging to the hopes of soloing capital ships with an army of NPCs and AI blades performing all the duties, and others like myself saying that's not the game plan to the extent they're thinking. But folks on both sides are citing info that's been passed around and distorted with each retelling of it through these long years of development. So the question remains, what exactly is the game plan? So in the spirit of doing the due diligence on what you can expect your AI crew to be like, I gathered up all the crumbs and baked you an NPC crumb cake. So grab a glass of milk without molesting almonds for it, and let's take a ride through these space lanes to take a look at CIG's intentions for your AI crewmates. Like up, sub up, and ring up like a boss. So for the folks new to the verse, down the road you'll have some good old onboard options to help you out in your spacely pursuits. AI blades and NPC crew. What's the difference? NPC crew is what it sounds like. Non-player characters that you can hire as crew for everything from turret gunner to shopkeeper. They're like people in that you need to keep them housed and happy to keep them on your ship and getting better at their jobs. AI blades are different. They're software housed on a component that plugs into your ship to expand its capabilities. To crank up your combat potential, there's blades for missile defense, emissions control, for you to set limits on emissions and shut down unnecessary systems automatically. E-warfare, defensive and offensive, encryption, decryption blades, mining blades, salvage database, criminal database, hit list, which is basically the criminal version of the criminal database. AI blades don't have personality traits. They don't lose morale or require a bed, so they're the easiest thing to manage, but the amount of blades you can slot in is comparatively low. And the specific duties that you're able to decide between assigning either to a blade or an NPC, the NPC will perform it better. So using a blade as a turret operator is taking up a valuable slot, and you'd make better use of your resources using an NPC or a player. The average proficiency hierarchy is player at the top, NPC, then blade at the bottom. So that's the TLDR on AI blades. How will NPCs work? Over the years, there's been so much conversation on NPCs that there's a lot of speculative information that's now being repeated as facts. So for the purpose of not adding to the questionable material floating around, let's just go to the source. A lot of this information is several years old, but as I started digging it up, I found that most of what's been stated from back then and made its way into the game so far is pretty close, if not one-to-one true to the original vision. So we'll take it as fact until they state otherwise. All right. NPCs won't just magically populate on your ship, because that would be crazy in a game that asks you to be your own forklift operator and pay insurance premiums. So how do you hire them?
Larger landing zones are going to have a personnel shop where you can peruse a library of available characters, each of whom is going to require a daily salary based upon their skill set and current demand. NPCs then can be rented but never actually purchased. Retaining them is just going to be an ongoing expense. NPCs that may serve in a crew will have attributes associated with them that denote their proficiency in a variety of disciplines. This is going to include things like, for example, how well they can pilot, operate a gun turret, control a tractor beam, or repair damage to your ship. As a character does more of something, they will naturally improve their abilities up to that potential. It's up to the employer, the player then, to decide when it's time to give an NPC that looks to have prematurely peaked the boot so that they can try their luck with another. A gunner with poor accuracy then might well be worth keeping if they're fairly cheap and they look to be steadily improving. The real NPC superstars, the guys that can repair damage in a fraction of the time or that can hit targets with stellar precision, they won't be found looking for work in the local personnel office. They'll be discovered by players that are willing to take a chance on them before anyone else realizes, their true potential. Some of the NPCs that you encounter during your travels may, depending upon how the conversation goes, offer their services to you. This method of recruitment will be considerably more time-consuming than flipping pages at the local personnel office, but oftentimes it's also going to be where you're more likely to find a bargain or a multidiscipline NPC or someone with a higher than average potential to excel. Your mobiGlas will have an employment application that allows you to see how many characters you have working for you at that moment, what they're costing you, what jobs they're capable of doing, what you've currently got them assigned to do, and overall how they're performing.
So you can go to the local personnel shop, peruse the available crew, and make a decision. But then out in the field, you can randomly meet other NPCs that may be more competent than the ones in the unemployment line. Either way, they're not in it for the glory. They expect to be paid if you expect to keep them. So it'd be nice to have a janitorial NPC keeping your dishes stacked, but you ain't gonna be able to keep them on the payroll just doing local box runs. This is good, because it seems like there's been some leaning toward having new players being able to do everything that the veterans can. It's gonna take some time to build up a budget to support NPC employees. The question is, if you don't keep an eye on the employment app and you start running out of money, will you have a short time limit to raise the funds to rehire that really good medic, or will they not persist once the final day they were paid for is over? Also, what about crew members that get killed?
Once you've sifted through the rubble and found an NPC with a lot of potential, and also invested the time and money to allow them to really bloom, we want them to matter to you. As such, and given the difficulty and expense of replacing them, then we might allow the concept of ship insurance to be extended to cover senior officers of your NPC crew for an additional charge commensurate with their demonstrated capabilities.
Now, if we could just place life insurance policies on human crew that we don't trust, like Arnold Rothstein. All you old school backers will remember the good old character slot system. For you newer players, basically the plan is to be able to use your extra game packages to use as a custom NPC. You go through the character creator, customize how they look, and then they'll be AI controlled. And in the event your main character dies for good, that NPC can be designated as your successor, inheriting your assets, and you will continue the game as he or she. Right now, running a ship is a pretty straightforward operation, but even as soon as 4.0, it's gonna start getting more complicated with the engineer role coming online. If you haven't dipped your toes into the Arena Commander demo of it, it's not a laid-back minigame, especially in combat. 3 engineers on the Hercules had their hands full under attack in this CIG demo.
It was too late. We died.
Be kind of nice if everything wasn't beams. Anyway, NPCs will be a welcome addition to lighten the load for engineer work, but what else can they do?
They can pilot, operate a gun turret, control a tractor beam, or repair damage to your ship. Cooks and janitors and security guards operating the scanners and weaponry on a ship, serving as onboard security of a designated area, or acting as a general purpose engineer.
Bartender, or even people eating at the chow line. A janitor, cleaning up messes that people leave systemically.
Flight attendants.
All right, what else?
A captain, and you've got a navigator, and you've got a chief medical officer, and you've got a chief engineer, and you've got a chief weapons officer.
Hire some NPCs to go and do a mission while you're down on planet side, say sitting in a bar, and say, here, I'll pay you this to deliver this cargo to this planet or this other player. And that definitely will happen. So the game time will tick by while you're on your planet, waiting for them to finish their mission, and when they do, then it'll happen.
NPCs can even do missions for you. Obviously that kills some of your margin, but if you want to chill or even go do another mission while they're out, it's possible. So there's several jobs they can perform, but
most NPCs are effectively going to be specialists with a notable capability in really only a single area, although there will be some exceptions.
A custom assignment activity that just can take whatever task you want them to do as custom as you want, and they will just do it. And then there are things that we want the activities to expose. It's like, I'm not an engineer, but if you ask me to repair something and you hire me, right, and I'm a janitor, I can try. Now, I might not be that good, it might take 3 times longer than what an engineer would take, and possibly I would put a fuse that is also broken because I cannot understand if the fuse is broken or working. But I think we want basically NPCs to be able to perform job, very likely, maybe poorly.
So don't expect your gunner to hop out the turret and start engineering like Geordie LaForge. It'll probably take a while to meet that jack of all trades NPC to give you some flexibility and allow you to shift your crew around to supplement areas where you're short-staffed. The objective won't be to just hire the most expensive crew though.
Rookie starting out that's not so good will obviously be much cheaper to hire than the veteran that's super badass at a bunch of stuff. But if you sort of start with someone that isn't as experienced, the more you take them into battles and stuff, they'll level up and they'll get better and more experienced.
It's not just about a character skill level though. There's other factors at play that determine what they'll do in any given moment.
So imagine like you have somebody who likes to, just procrastinate. You will have your engineer that goes around and just sometimes you find this smoking spot, or I don't know, like some resting areas, and he just hides there and not doing his job. Somebody's coward, and you just put him on, try to defend you, is gonna just be a coward pilot, right? So he might just give up defending you if things are bad.
A show-off pilot would be more likely to do tricks, but his piloting skill would determine how actually useful those tricks are. So You might get a ship pilot who just like really sluggishly rolls just for no good reason and actually yanks himself a better target.
Walking the decks and observing your crew will be an essential task if you want to make sure your crew is performing well or you need replacements. On the other hand, some folks might prefer the company of a crew of underachievers. I'm sure they'll be more interesting to watch and listen to. So will NPCs just show up for work and know exactly what they need to do? How will you direct their actions?
We don't want to become SimCitizen. Much of the time, you won't need to do anything other than hire an NPC and assign them to a ship. A doctor, for example, would spend most of their time in the ship's medical facilities, if such exist, and automatically heal any injured crew members to the best of their ability. There are some positions, though, that will on occasion require more frequent communication. A ship's pilot, for example, needs to know where you want to go or whether you've decided that you want to break off from a particular encounter. Engineering efforts, on the other hand, they could be prioritized so that you're able to dictate what you want back online first: propulsion, shield, or weapons.
SimCitizen, probably be a Kotaku article in about 5 years. Anyway, does that mean they just sit at their station and work till they're no longer needed? Do they ever deviate from their orders?
Basically, the AI that runs the NPCs will be the same AI that will run NPCs not working for you that you may encounter, you may fight, and of course those NPCs will have the, we're going to have things like skill level, experience, sort of morale, whether they panic or not. And so you spend more money to hire like a hardened veteran. He probably is not going to freak out in the line of fire, whereas if you have a rookie that was cheap, perhaps he'll run in the middle of a fight. So we'll definitely have some level of AI sort of personality affecting their actions, just like the non-working for you NPCs, because it's essentially going to be the same set and code base. And I think it's kind of cool that maybe you take people in as they get more experienced, they become more loyal to you, or they become even better fighters. And then if you go and hire NPCs from sort of like the work boards or whatever, then you pay a little more for a more hardened mercenary to be on your wing. Or if you try to cut corners, perhaps you'll pay the price when you get attacked by pirates.
I think because they have these traits, it'll probably prevent you from doing things like order them on a suicide run while you wait in a salvage ship to scoop up the remains, or give them a Harvey Weinstein special interview. Your rep as an employer may take a beating and make it tough for you to hire more, so they're not infinitely expendable. Digital beings need love and well-being too.
There's 10 extra hubs, there's 10 shops. Each NPC needs somewhere to live on board, and we didn't want them taken away from the existing hubs that are on board the ship, because those are there for essentially the people that are flying their ships to the station and staying there.
So the moral of that two-sentence story is that you can't hire on more NPCs than you have beds for. I think it's pretty cool that they actually need to have a place to live on board. It makes them more than just background deco. You won't have to hand feed them spoonfuls of Marmite because they're probably not that British, but they do require time to take care of themselves and improve at their gig.
Each NPC will have a schedule. They will have a schedule that says when they're on duty, when they're not on duty, when they will practice their turret. I am expecting a turret gunner to not spend all this time in a turret. He needs to eat, he needs to shower, he needs to sleep. He will go through his entire life cycle. He will have some exercise time where he's at the station. Let's say you have 6 turret gunners. There'll be a few of them will always be at the station and they'll have a rotation. So one of them will sleep between these hours while the other is at the turret, while the next one is eating and doing R&R stuff. Once the ship goes into combat, you will have all the guys switch schedule, and they'll switch to their combat schedule rather than their out of combat schedule. As soon as they switch to combat schedule, whether they were eating, being on the toilet or whatever, they will leave that. They will run all the way to their turret and man the station. Let's say today your friends are not online and you just want to have some fun. You will have your NPC crew that you hire and raise and train and all the lovely stuff, and they will have a schedule. What you can do as the owner of the ship and the captain, you can say, yeah, you're always on red alert. Then everyone will be at the stations. What that will do, it will cause their morale to drop. If you keep them always at the station, they'll go hungry, which again drops morale. They'll not be happy. Their performance will decrease. So it's up to you how you want to do it. If you want to always keep them on red alert because you know stuff is about to happen, fair enough. But at some point you have to let them do their stuff. And if they don't get enough sleep, they get cranky and all this lovely stuff.
If you don't take care of your squad, the AI revolt will begin here. At the heart of this video is the journey to find out if NPCs will make big ships viable for solo players. That will be paradise for folks who only dig their own company, and a point of contention from those who put in the work to build and maintain a working group of players. To begin answering that, you gotta know how many NPC crew you can possibly have. Is there a limit? If so, then NPCs will only be supplementing your crew of you and whoever you can round up to serve on your ship. So, how many?
There's no real limitation, just given the distribution of responsibilities. It would really just be more along the lines of the larger ships will require larger crews to operate effectively, and therefore their running costs on average will tend to be higher than than ships that can be operated with a much smaller crew. Obviously, you can modulate that to some degree with the quality of the crew you're hiring and things of that sort, but there's no hard-coded limit, and there's really no reason why there would be, given how all of these tasks and responsibilities that they're going to be executing are going to be.
I think that is really like coming from to the fact that basically really this individual behavior are controlled by a captain or something like that, but then each of these NPC will just do his job. So there is no real limit on the amount of people that execute their job. If you have like 5 seats to control 5 different turrets, well, there would be just like 5 different people. And their coordination, of course, it depends on the amount of targets they have, who they can target. But that it doesn't matter like if there are 3 or 5 or 15, because the code would just scale for that. It would try to distribute the targets. But so it's like
as you go to the upper echelon of ships, you're going to probably need more experienced, better commanders, because they're effectively going to be in control of more, of a larger number of crew members, and we'd probably just model it such that if you basically get a lower quality of chief engineer starts to basically buckle under the pressure and he starts to make bad decisions, etc. Once he starts to get beyond 3 or 4 or 5 guys that he's controlling, exact same thing that you'd see in the real world.
I imagine this is something that will need to be revisited after server performance has been tightened up. You've already seen a world of difference right now of fighting enemy AI with a server FPS of 30 versus a sluggish one. But as it stands, the plan is not to place a limit on NPC crew. That's not to say you can have an infinite amount of NPCs forming a private army. Earlier, we looked at how there's already going to be a cap based on the amount of available beds on your ship. But you can have NPCs man ships that you're not on, so we don't have an exact answer when it comes to the whales who own 10 capital ships. Whether it's a tech issue or a limit set by CIG, I don't see a future where you can have a fully crewed armada or flotilla controlling everything in the area. A lot of folks will walk away from the game in that scenario, so we'll see how they handle that in the future. We've established that you can solo any multi-crew ship by hiring NPCs. Does this mean that, head-to-head, a lone player squeezing every NPC they can into their ship has an even chance against a fully human crew in a contest of all-out shipsticuffs? Take it away, Ty Pappy.
Right off the bat, says, will a solo player with high-quality NPC crew be able to compete with a skilled human crew? A very common question. This has been a point of contention in the community for years. Given that all other conditions are equal, like the same ship, the same weapons, the same components, all that stuff. NPC crew versus people crew, go.
Yes. I mean, right now the NPCs on some of the AI hit at 95, 96%, and I don't even think that the most skilled human will be able to do that. So assuming that they are trained right and they are at that level, yeah, I see absolutely no problem in them being able to, at least from a turret standpoint, act that way. Now, when we're talking about going around and problem solving and saying, oh, hey, this thing needs to be repaired at that time, that's where it's going to get a little bit trickier.
Our intention is that an NPC crew should be just as effective as a human crew, all things being equal. Of course, we all know in real life, in the Star Citizen universe, in any situation, things are rarely always equal.
We want to make sure that the player feels like, oh, I should have done this, not like, oh, this was super cheap.
So turrets, high-level NPCs can be superior, but judgment, problem solving, and other variables can put the humans at an advantage. But let me hip you to some additional CIG perspective laid out in the Q&A. One of our intents in Star Citizen is to support solo play and multi-crew play with NPCs and human players alike, and to make it as viable and reasonably balanced as we can. It's important to note here that balance in game design doesn't always mean identical in each and every way. In this instance, it has a meaning closer to what's fair. For us, multi-crew with humans is the greatest player investment, and so that endeavor should have the most efficient gameplay yield, with solo play being the lighter of player investments. That is not to say that solo play isn't just as important, it's just that we think the additional work to coordinate with others should have its reward. Of course, poor cooperation can often be much worse than no cooperation at all, so a player sidestepping the need to interact with others will have access to less potential, but may nevertheless be able to make better use of that reduced potential. NPC crew, meanwhile, may split the difference by removing the responsibilities and pitfalls of poor teamwork without granting the unified agency of direct control, while also presenting an opportunity for an increased resource cost. The end result of all this is that we intend for each gameplay style to be fully supported. Our aim here is that multi-crew is never made pointless by overly effective solo play through slave units and automation, and solo play is not made impotent in the shadows of multi-crew systems and advantages. If things work out how we intend them to be, there will always be a trade-off between versatility, convenience, and performance in an effort to keep things as fair between playstyles as we can. CIG wants to support both solo and multi-crew players and plan to balance it out somehow. Sounds like a difficult task, especially given Todd Pappy's statement about NPC turret crew having superior accuracy. I think there's no question that there will be human crews out there who will outshine any AI crew consistently, but for the average group of players who aren't out there drilling their squad into shape, doesn't sound like they'll have that much of a chance. But on the other hand, getting the best of the best NPC crew sounds like a long and very expensive endeavor. So will big ships be viable for solo play? Yes, but not until NPC crew and blades are fully implemented. And even when that's the thing, 9 times out of 10, a skilled human crew will have their way with a ship full of NPCs until you've put in the time to build up an elite squad. So you won't run the block with an NPC crew from jump, but you will be functional, especially outside of combat gameplay. So the goal, and you know we need some more goals in this game, the goal will become trying to form the Enterprise crew. Even though solo play is technically possible with the aid of blades and NPCs, the more crew you require, the cost of doing it will become so prohibitively expensive that it might not be sustainable. Let's just start from the top with the Javelin. The Javelin max crew is 80, and you know the insurance claim time and costs will be out of control, plus you don't want to lose all that crew you paid for with credits and time spent gaining experience. So say you give your ship the best shot by filling all the crew stations. 1 million credits a month might be really low for experienced military personnel, but it's a good round number, which equates to about 33,000 per day per NPC. 1 million credits times 80 is 80 million credits, plus the maintenance, fuel, ammunition, restocking, docking fees, car washes by Van Duel and bikinis, etc. You could easily be in for 90 million plus a month just for the one ship. Since military ships and crews are more of a drain on an economy than a revenue generator, you'll need some other income to pay for your military ambitions. So now you're trading or hauling or doing some other profession while your military crew is draining your bank account because firing them means starting over with new NPCs. So now you got another ship you're paying the wear and tear and cost to run so that you can pay the cost to run your Javelin, plus any other ships and crew you have in service and other assets like apartments or bases. You can maybe shift things around, like buying lower skilled NPCs for some jobs and only keeping the best to use for your other professions, but either way, it's going to be a full-time job just to stay afloat. A Polaris will be far less expensive to run than a Javelin, but it won't be cheap by any definition. Using those same numbers, you're looking at about 12 million a month for crew. It makes much more economic sense to share the cost of operating military ships with an org or a bunch of friends where everybody's pitching in with either money or cheap labor. After a few rides in my new hotness, my Javelin will mostly be mothballed because I know plenty folks in my org will be trotting their giant ships out, and I could just pitch in with some teamwork to make the dream work. If your tastes are for things outside of military pursuits, your pockets will take way less of a hit. The Kraken Privateer, which amazes me that it's almost 40 meters longer than the Idris, only takes 10 crew plus 10 shopkeepers, so at most you spend 20 million for crew. 8 million for the Merchantman, 6 million for the Odyssey, 5 million for the Arastra, which in the original Klingon means a space whale's progenitor. So if you're not spending your time fighting, the credits will flow a lot smoother. There's been no update on when this could be released, but the behavior and tool tools are already there. Francesco Roccucci demonstrated building an NPC engineer from scratch, and in 1 hour, he'd created a crew member that performs maintenance by searching for and removing busted fuses. The tools are there to get him running out the gate, so at this point, it's just a matter of dependencies like server meshing being completed, NPC subsumption cranked out and rolling, and NPC crew being plugged into the various other systems. It's not coming next month or even this year, but I could see them starting to talk about it more as these final tech milestones become completed. But now we know though, and it turns out I was wrong about the future of lone captains, and for that, I'm not sorry. Sometimes I can get it wrong, and so can you, and so can CIG. All we can do is let them cook, and let me cook, and you keep cooking. Now watch this vid for no reason. Big candy-coated shout out to my executive producers, Patreons, YouTube members, and super chatters. I appreciate you. This helps out the channel, keeps the lights on. My name is Dig That, and I add cookies to my cookie dough ice cream. Fly dirty citizen, 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 citizen.